Man, 2016 was a super good year for board games.
It was scary good for board games.
Like suspiciously good. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We're the Brothers Murph, and this is our top 10 games of 2016.
Dude, 2016, for whatever reason, just produced so many
for
new
us,
classics.
Yeah, like for us is like probably the best year in board games in terms of the games that came out that we love. I mean, look at the top 10 of BoardGameGeek. There's like 3 or 4 just from 2016.
2016 was this weird year where everyone's best ideas just came together.
Everyone came together.
It's a beautiful thing. So we're going to show you our favorite games from 2016.
This is probably just the best year.
So good.
Our number 10 is Mechs vs. Minions. I distinctly remember the day this game came out because everyone talked about it on the day of. No one had ever heard of this game. No one knew it was coming. All of a sudden, boom, every content creator was doing coverage on Mechs vs. Minions. And it was this big, massive co-op programming game by Riot Games. If you like League of Legends, that's them. And the game is set in that same kind of universe. But one of the main things is like it's this big, cool co-op game that we really, really love, where you are programming your movement. You're these big mechs and you're trying to take out these minions. Kind of campaign, well, it's definitely a campaign. It's kind of legacy. You're like opening some stuff, but it's basically got a whole bunch of different scenarios you can do. Super, super fun. But one of the main things is this game is massive. I mean, it is huge. And because it's Riot Games, they literally have like billions and billions of dollars. It was really, really cheap, especially for how big it was. It's probably got the best production of any game ever. It's just insane. But Mechs vs. Minions, on top of all the crazy production, is actually a really, really fun co-op programming game. I like programming, but I like programming in co-op because then if you mess up, at least everyone's messed up together. Competitive programming games are kind of hit and miss with me. Mechs vs. Minions really sings as that kind of perfect co-op programming game. That's why it's number 10.
Now, as big as Mechs and Minions is, Kingdomino is small, but mighty nonetheless. It is a fantastic game by Bruno Cathala in which you are putting out these different domino tiles that will show potentially 2 different land types or sometimes the same land type on both halves. And what you're doing is you're building a little kingdom in a 5x5 grid. You cannot go wider or taller than 5x5. From top to bottom or side to side. And what you're going to try to do is create large areas of single types of land, like a whole bunch of water, a whole bunch of forest, because every little square, meaning half of a domino, will count towards scoring for that land type, but only if you also have crowns within that land type. You can have a humongous area of grasslands, and if you have 0 crowns, it's 0 points. But if you have 4 crowns in there, every single square within that grassland type will be multiplied by 4. So you can put together gigantic scores if you manage to build your tiles with those crowns correctly. But it comes with a twist because all of the tiles are numbered, and the higher numbered tiles come with crowns and stuff. They're much more valuable. But if you were to take one of those higher tiles, in the next turn, when we have new tiles that come out, we're going to execute in player order from the low number tiles to high. So if I chose the highest number tile, I'm choosing last next turn, meaning I'm going to get whatever tile is left over. So it comes down to that balance point of, do I want, again, less valuable tiles, but more flexibility of tiles for the future? Or do I want the more valuable stuff now, knowing that in the next turn, I might be stuck with something? And as you build out your kingdom, you have to match land types. You have to have at least 1/2 of your domino matching something that you're placing it next to. And you might get stuck where you're like, this is the double water. There's no other water around. I cannot place this legally, and now I can't complete my entire 5x5 grid. So there's just a couple little puzzly elements to consider, but it's a very simple game ultimately, and that's why it's on our list.
Our number 8, it's World's Fair 1893. We talk about this game a lot because it's a game that, one, we feel like not enough people talk about. We really love this game. It's one of the best games out there, especially for area control. This is a game that takes place at the World's Fair in, shocker, 1893. And basically there are 5 different industries. There's like electricity, again, it was 1893. You know, you have like agriculture, you have like fine art, manufacturing, and you basically are putting your followers out into these different industries trying to gain majorities. You're gaining these majorities and you're collecting collecting these cards, and these cards are specific to the different industries. So it'll be like specific kinds of arts that were there at the fine arts part of the pavilion at the World's Fair 1893. And it's cool because all the cards rather, are actual things that were there. And there's even a little description on each one of like, hey, this is this specific piece, it was made by this person. So it's got a lot of really, really cool information in it. But on top of that, it's got this really great area control kind of set collection game underneath it that plays really fast, scales really well, and it just sings, absolutely sings. It's great area control, but not super like fighty and not super mean area control. And so if you're looking for kind of a not super in-your-face area control game, this is it, and it's just got such a cool theme. Oh, it's great. World's Fair 1893 is wonderful, and we'll keep talking about it till the end of time because more people need to play it. It's wonderful.
Up next, we have Scythe by Stonemaier Games. Stonemaier Games' crowning achievement is Scythe. It's a fantastic game where you are going to be working on this big board with up to 7 players with the expansion materials, and you are kind of vying for area control. You're trying to get control of hexes to produce resources on those to then fuel building mechs, building buildings, getting workers out, all sorts of things, and you're kind of going for a whole mess of different objectives. The game is sort of a race, ultimately, to get 6 of your little objective stars out onto the board by doing various things. So there's a million kind of directions to go, but it's really about building an efficient kind of sequence of actions, because every turn you have a little player board, you have to move your action pawn to a different action space. You can't do the same action multiple times in a row, with the exception of one of the factions can do that as a special power. So you're trying to make use of these powers and go from this action to get these resources, to go back to that action to build this mech, which is going to unlock this ability, which allows you to move over here, and you're trying to go through this whole big sequence. There's a little bit of battle in there. It's kind of they always refer to it as a Cold War game. The chance for a battle between characters is always possible, whether or not it happens all the time, but it's always sort of, you got to protect yourself from invaders from afar, as it were. So Scythe is a wonderful game. It's a really great production, especially with all these upgraded bits and things that are available for it, and it's one we highly recommend you check out.
Our number 6 is Quadropolis. We've talked about this game before. This is a really great city building game that's got a really unique way of drafting tiles from the center of the board. In the center of the board, there's all these different tiles that you can build out your cities, like factories and harbors, and then, generally city building stuff. And so you have these architects that have numbers on them 1 through 4. And how you draft your tiles is you put your architects around that central grid of tiles. And if you put your 4 out, whatever row or column you put it in, you'll then count 4 down and you take that tile. But since you put it down with your 4 architect, in your city, you have to put it in either the 4th row or the 4th column. And so you're trying to plan out what you need. Like, I really, really need a park, but I really, really need a park in this specific part of my city. Okay, so that means I have to use only this architect or this architect. So where can I put it to get the tile I need in the city? It's kind of a weird little puzzle that works really, really well, and more games need to use this system because it's a super cool way to do it, and Quadropolis is really the only one that does it, and it's awesome. It's really, really great. Kind of a more simple city builder, so if you don't want a really big, heavy city builder, this is a great, great kind of like gateway plus into city building. It's really great. Quadropolis is wonderful, and it's Days of Wonder, so the production value is like off the charts. It's great. Quadropolis is our number 6.
Next up, we have Clank, which is my former number 1 game of all time. This is one of my favorite deck building games because it incorporates deck building with a physical board that you then use cards that you're playing to move around a dungeon, and you're trying to go deeper into the dungeon to collect artifacts from this dragon that's kind of ferreted things all the way, and you're stealing from them ultimately, which the dragon does not love. And so you are kind of racing to go down, collect as much treasure, buy as many valuable cards, get those artifacts and things that you can, and then make it back up out of those dungeons before you die to be able to count up your loot. So in the game, as you're going around, you're making clank, you're making noise. And the more noise you make, the more cubes you add to the clank area of the board. And then when the dragon cards are revealed throughout that big deck of cards, you have to take all the cubes from the clank area, put them into a bag, and start drawing cubes out. And that is the dragon hunting around for people. So the more cubes you have in that bag, the more likely cubes are gonna get pulled out, which means you've just got damaged because you're being so noisy that the dragon says, yeah, dude, I live here, I know where you are. and you can actually get killed in the game and not be able to count your treasure. But you can also make it just above the line of the dungeon, flop over, die. But since you made it past that kind of halfway point, you still get to count your treasure, and you can even win even if you do not survive your encounter in the deeps with that dragon. So Clank is just a fun game thematically. There's all these different maps and boards. There's Clank Legacy now. It's just a really great game that uses deck building in a way that's satisfying and intriguing. And so it's one that we've loved since 2016, and that's why it's on our list.
On number 4 is the Networks. This is a game that just works. It just works. You're building out a TV station. You have a station and you're like, I'm gonna put this show, and you have different time slots, 8, 9, and 10 primetime TV only. We're not even on air the rest of the day, just those 3 hours, that's it. And so you're trying to fill out those with certain shows. Certain shows have different things they're good at. So like action shows get you a lot of viewers, but you have to put a really good star on them. So all the shows you can add like stars or ads. Ads give you money, stars get you more viewers. The more viewers you have, the more points you get, because viewers are your points in this game. And throughout the game, you're gonna be switching out these shows as your shows age by season to season to season. Some shows get better with age, some shows super don't. So you're like, you know what, this show was really great for 2 seasons, but people are super over it now. So now I gotta swap out that show for a new show to keep my viewers coming in. And it's a game that really feels unique in terms of the mechanics. It's like card drafting, but the way it works incredibly well with the theme of TV, and it just makes it feel unlike any other game out there. And then it's got tons of puns and parodies of TV show. Like instead of fringe, there's cringe. It's really, really funny if you like puns. Gil Hova does great puns. Gil Hova's the best. And nonetheless, the Networks is really, really, really good, and we love it to death. The Networks are number 4.
All right, now we're getting into straight up classics territory, modern day classics, and this one is Terraforming Mars. To this very day, I imagine that the first convention we go to, once we can all get back together, I'm gonna go out and see a whole sea of people playing Terraforming Mars, because that's just what it looks like at conventions. Anytime you have a gathering, a game night, or anything like that we did in the before times, you just are guaranteed to see somebody playing Terraforming Mars. It's an infinitely playable game. It's super fun the way that you use Tableau building to build these engines that make it so that as you go through the game, you start producing more and more stuff, whether that be energy or titanium or straight up money or greenery. You can make plants and stuff to terraform the planet. So it's a game that's very satisfying to play because you're using these cards, you're spending your money wisely to all work together to terraform a planet, but you hope to be the best at doing that job so that you get the most kind of credit for it all. You get the highest prestige and terraform rating out of doing this thing, but it's a really interesting project because we all have to get the planet to a certain level of kind of sustainable for life-ness so that we can trigger the end of the game. But I want to be the one that kind of profits the most off of this terraforming process. So Terraforming Mars is just a big, beautiful production that has now 3D tiles and sort of things you can get for it. That's super exciting, and it's just, again, played all the time, everywhere. Again, when you get back together with people, you're gonna see it back on tables because it just sticks around, and for good reason, and that's why it's on our list.
Great Western Trail is our number 2. And I'm talking about Great Western Trail. There's new versions of Great Western Trail coming out, which makes me really excited because I love Great Western Trail. This is a big Alexander Pfister game where you are running cattle up to Kansas City. You're sending them off to different places, including Sacramento, California, which is where we're from. And it's exciting because Sacramento never shows. We live in Los Angeles now. It shows up a lot. Sacramento never shows up in games. So there's part of me that loves it just for that. But nonetheless, on top of that, it's a really, really great game. I love Great Western Trail. You are doing this big rondelle where you're running cattle up to Kansas City, you go back to the start, and you're running more cattle up to Kansas City. When you run cattle up there, you want to have different kinds of cattle. So you don't want all of one kind, you want all of different kinds. Different cattle have different values. You're trying to basically sell off the best herd of cattle you possibly can. You want to be as diverse as possible. And it's just, it works. It's one of the top ranked games out there. I think it's in the top 10 right now. It's that good. It really is. I absolutely adore Great Western Trail. I'm so excited for the new versions just because they look so pretty. I really like pretty games, and I love this. You make a game that I already love, but you make it prettier, and I'm very, very, very excited. Nonetheless, Great Western Trail is so good. It's number 2. Oh, Let's get to number 1.
Our number 1 is A Feast for Odin, my number 1 favorite game of all time, and that's why it's number 1 on the list, right? How can I beat it? 2016 produced the greatest game ever, and that's A Feast for Odin. It's a fantastic, humongous worker placement game by Uwe Rosenberg. You have this giant central board that has like 60 action selection spots with all these different columns, and you have a big pool of workers, and it's all about how you commit your workers to different action spaces, because some of them only require 1 worker, but they're kind of weak. They're not super duper cool. But if I put 4 workers, which will represent a large piece of my kind of pool of workers, I can do some really crazy actions, and I'm going to be ultimately doing all these actions to get money, to get all these different polyomino tiles, and then upgrade those tiles so that I can A, feed my Vikings, and then also put them onto my kind of central board, or if I go and discover islands, I can then cover up those islands with all these different polyomino shapes. So it's this kind of wild mixture of tons of worker placement, resource management, and then polyomino tile puzzle placement. So it gives you a ton of stuff to think about, and I think that's kind of why I love it so much. It just gives me a lot of things that I enjoy, smushes them all together in a way that like works really well, even though maybe it shouldn't. And so it's just sort of a bunch of flavors that I enjoy, put them together, it makes a good plate. And that's why I love Feast for Odin, and that's why it's our number 1 game from 2016.
So that is our top 10 games 2016. Again, just an absolute banger.
There's so many more from this year as well. That was not at all.
Honestly hard to pare down this list of this.
Let us know what your favorite games are from 2016, and if there are any other years where like that year so many games came out and you want to see us do a list
like
based on the year.
2012 I know was a really good
2018
year.
was a good year.
So if there's any other years, let us know down in the comments below what years you'd like to see us cover.
Absolutely. Until next time, I'm Mike.
I'm Nick.
We'll see you in the next list.
Bye everybody.